Welcome to the O Studio podcast, where we delve into the art of feeling better. My name is Maddie Lovell, and O Studio is a recovery and wellbeing franchise that's here to help you relax, recover, and improve. Today, we're opening up a conversation most people avoid: death. It might sound unusual, but this idea came from our episode with Dr. Lucy Hone, where we talked all about grief. And it made me realise how little we actually talk about death until we're forced to. So this isn't about being dark or too heavy. It's about what death can teach us about living well. Enjoy. Alrighty team, how's everyone's numbers? Out of 10, where are you at?
An 8.
8.
8.
We're all 8s.
3 8s.
Is it the first time we've all been the same?
I think
it
so.
is. Yeah.
But I might bring us down a little bit because this it sounds heavy, but I am really interested to talk about and explore this a little bit more. And it's the topic is death. I know that sounds heavy, right? But we had a really good conversation with Dr. Lucy Hone, about her grieving really, and I actually think about death quite a lot, like in a weird way. I don't know if it's normal or abnormal, but I've heard a couple of interesting conversations on podcasts recently, and I just thought it's something that happens to everyone. Everyone has to deal with it at some stage of their life, and so it's certainly not a happy thing, but I think you can also take some good things from it as well. And so, I mean, do you guys think about it? Have you had anyone close to you pass away before?
Yeah, I think about it probably every couple of days, I'd say.
Really?
Yeah, maybe not necessarily like myself dying, but just probably people around me.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I probably do think about myself dying as well. Just around like all those like the shock things that just come out of nowhere. You just hear of people just like something happens that's completely out of the blue. Like I'll think about that and have a bit of fear that will happen to me at some point. Mm-hmm. But I've had my nana pass away when I was 16. So it's 10 years ago. And I was closest with her out of all of my family members. So that was definitely a hard one. And then there's been a few people my age, peers and stuff that have as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I definitely don't think about it often, but I think I've got a reasonable relationship with it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think like stoicism was a massive big part of me for a long time. Like I was reading lots of stuff around it, and I think I got quite comfortable around like this. I get one crack here. This is all going to go. Everyone that's alive right now is not going to be alive at some stage. Yeah. And the house that I own is not really my house. There'll be someone else that will move into that place at some stage down the line, and that we're just we're temporary. We get a temporary experience. I'm aware of that. It does, I get upset, thinking about, my daughters and my wife and, my parents and stuff like that. But at the same time, I feel like I've got a reasonable sort of relationship with it. Mm-hmm. But it's none of us are going to get out of life without having to experience some really hard things. Loved ones really close to us. Everyone's going to experience it. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's a good conversation to have. It's a good discussion because it's not. Whenever you ever talked about death with someone, like really gone into that. So I think it's important. But I think for me personally, I've got a reasonable sort of mindset towards it. Yeah. But then at the same time, it can just come out of nowhere. Yeah. It really can. It can just hit you from the side. When someone close to you passes away, and you don't really realise how underprepared you were for losing that person in your life.
I think even just thinking about that, it's like a fine line of being like does anything matter when you go like, oh, in 100 years' time, I'm not even going to be here. Or sometimes if something goes wrong or something happens or someone's getting annoyed at something or whatever, I'm just like, is it really that deep? Like if you start thinking about death and everything around it, I'm like, at the end of the day, is it really that deep? Because we're all going to die one day. Are you going to be on your deathbed thinking about this moment right now? Yeah. Probably not.
Yeah. And that's where I think it's quite helpful, to think about, because it does give you a lot of perspective on things, I think. But you made an interesting comment. It was like, we don't talk about it. Like, why do you think we don't talk about it? It might just be our culture. I don't know. Maybe it's maybe other cultures and and even religions do talk
Yeah.
about it more and are closer with it, and maybe having a stronger belief in what happens to you after you die maybe changes the ability to talk about it more. I don't know, but we do avoid it, right? Like we don't really
Yeah.
talk about.
I think from my point of view, I'm quite comfortable talking about death, but I probably don't want to bring it up with lots of people because I'm unsure about how other people feel about it. So like someone could bring it up with me and I'd be completely fine. I can talk about it all day. It's fine. But I don't want to, or I'm a bit nervous to bring the concept of death or any experience around it up with other people because you just don't know the reaction that other people or the relationship that they might have with it, that it could be quite triggering for some people to talk about.
Yeah, and I get that's a good point, and it could be because of you might be nervous that they have had someone really close to them pass away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or they haven't, or they haven't, and they just don't have a good relationship.
Yeah.
Like I've got quite a few friends that have had experiences like that, but they can talk quite openly and fine about it. But yeah, to just like people that I haven't spoke to about it before, it's a bit like, I don't know.
The way that it seems to come up is, are you going to be cremated or are you going to be buried? That type of thing. And it's like, as you start thinking about it, it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's right. And then you think about it, Laura's like, if I died before her, I'm definitely going to be just with her everywhere.
The necklace.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's where it seems to pop up.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
I think I've thought about death more and more as I've got older. Like it starts to I just in your 20s and stuff, you just feel invincible and nothing matters. And I just think as you get older, for me, I've lost a couple of grandparents in the last 5 years, and then with kids and then partner and family that rely on you and need you, it just starts to think about it a bit more. And then I've been driving in a car and Sally and all the kids and the dog are in one car and I'm behind it. I'm like, just imagine if something came to that car. Literally my entire life isn't there. And it's just it's in a little bubble. They're in a 2x2 thing and they're just driving in front of me and there's nothing else in my life that really means anything if that car doesn't, if something happens to that car. And you're just but I also think that, it sounds like a negative thing, but I like the stoic approach. And it's so what? It's so bloody enjoy them when you do, and so I think that's quite helpful. And I do, I sometimes think about it weirdly. I will, kiss the girls, go and give them a kiss goodnight every night when I go to bed. I always just think, imagine if something happened, and it does make you hug longer.
It does.
I think it does kind of the opposite, right? It makes you feel grateful and happy kind of in that moment because of what you have right then and there. It's that being able to reflect on, if they weren't here, then this is I've got this, so I should be really grateful and happy.
Yeah, definitely. It's in my mind as well, there's an ego thing that it's if you can remove yourself, without bouncing around too much. Laura sort of has said a few times, if I passed away, she'd never be married again. And I'm like, well, absolutely. I want you to marry again. I want you to find someone. I want you to be happy. I want you to think that she could go 40 years without someone that's going to love and protect and help and be. I want her because I'm gone.
Yeah.
I don't know anything. It doesn't matter to me at all. And I think it's even I would love to think that I could get to that stage if Laura passed away. As horrible as that sounds, but ultimately, in my mind right now, I don't want to be with anyone else ever. You know what I mean? And whereas, death is going to happen. It is going to. We are all going to experience it. And what we all want for everyone else is that they can live the best life that they possibly have available to them. But then when we think about it for ourselves, we have all these other things that we lay over top of it. It's really easy to see someone and think, I really want that person to be able to move on genuinely and be okay that their mum has passed away or that their dad has passed away or that their partner has passed away or that their child has passed away. The most horrible things that you could ever experience. Whereas, strip all that aside, we want them to be able to live as happily and as fully as possible. And that can only happen if you have that approach of this is where I'm at. And I think Lucy explained it really, really well. She sort of, it doesn't never goes. You just learn to live with the scars, and those scars are always going to be there, but it doesn't mean that you can't live a full life because of something as horrific as it is. Yeah.
Yeah, but it is hard to fathom now, isn't it? Because it's like, this too shall pass. It's like with enough time, most things settle, and it's hard to think about that if in terms of losing a child or a loved one.
Yeah,
Like, it's impossible to think about. But
Yeah.
like most things, you get through everything in your life to date. And so, like, I'm sure there's been things that we've been through before in the past. You're like, I have no idea how this life can, make sense after this. Or we've seen that in someone else, but fast forward 30 years, like maybe, I don't know. Like, it's an easy thing to say now, but it. I was the opposite. I told Sally, no way. We're married, love. That's my ring, man. No. I just, you'd want them to be. Want them to be happy, but it's just, it's even a tough conversation to have with your partner, isn't it?
Yeah, Laura's like, well, it's not the same on the other way around.
Yeah.
What happens to me? No, you're single forever.
Yeah, I totally get it. And I think there's I get that's probably the positive side that can come from thinking about death is kind of like, well, one, there's the preparation and understanding, but also like I think of how it sort of can change what you do now, which I like the stoic approach. That Memento Mori is sort of like, just means like, remember that you'll die, remember mortality, remember you're mortal. And like, it does give you a bit of context sometimes. And the one sort of quote that I heard that sort of made me really want to have this conversation on this podcast was, he quoted a French philosopher, and he was a bit of an out there French philosopher, but pretty much what he said is the literal meaning of life is whatever you're doing now that prevents you from killing yourself. And so if I dumb that down, people say, like, what's the meaning of life? It's the reason you don't kill yourself. I know that sounds really dark and heavy, but like, if you think about that, like, why is it that you don't do that? And so, like, for me, it's like, well, I know that like my kid's life would be so much worse. I know that it would be so hard on Sally, and I know that their lives are better with them, and I know that I think that I've got a real opportunity to contribute to O Studio over the next number of years. And so like this, like, is that then the meaning of my life? Like, I don't know. It's certainly a part of it. And then I think it also means that the meaning of life is different for everyone. But it's like, and I thought it's very literal what he's saying, but it kind of makes a little bit of sense as well. And so like, what's the reason that you don't want to do that?
Yeah.
It's like,
what's the reason you want to live?
Yeah. It's like, that is the meaning of your life if you're talking about it literally.
Yeah. And it's why I guess suicide is the most gut-wrenching sort of thing for anyone to have to deal with in terms of like dying is one thing, or a loved one passing away, or a close friend, or a close family member, or just knowing that people are experiencing having to live with loved ones that have passed. It really upsets me thinking about it. And suicide, I guess, is like the toughest part of all of that. Like just knowing trying to think about the mindset, the state that person must have been in. If you're talking about the meaning of life, the lack of meaning that must have been there, or whatever was going on overrode in that moment.
Yeah, it's the inability to be able to recognize those things within your own life. Like, some people will they're not able to see that, and I feel like you could see someone, you could list off a whole bunch of things for them of why they should want to continue living, but they don't necessarily see those things. And that's a really hard conversation for lots of people as well. But it's such a prevalent thing.
It is, and it is heartbreaking, thinking about it, because it's not an abnormal thing that happens in New Zealand, in the world, and it's
I think you always think as well, like I always be like, I'm not going to know anyone that will happen to, like I won't. And then it does, and it's just shock, and you remember that, even the people that you think would be okay, and that just would never happen to them, or they wouldn't have that inability to see that. It can. They can just experience that, and you just have no idea. And you wish you had conversations like this with them. Yeah,
absolutely. And I appreciate and acknowledge all the stuff around that sort of stuff that we're talking about now, but like, and I don't want to downplay anything, but in terms of like that idea of like that is then becomes the meaning of life. So it's like, you know, the when we're talking about death today, and so it's like from the thought of death can help create meaning, you know, or the absence, you know, and so like that's kind of why I'm bringing it up and how I want to frame it is like death can be that's a thought experiment you can play through to try and figure out help define meaning in life.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's where I think, you know, the stoic idea of Memento Mori, it's like someone who doesn't understand that thinks it's really morbid, you know, remember death. You know, it's, you know, like Sophie's got it tattooed on her arm, you know, like, and you could say, oh, remember death, like what a horrible thing to think, but it's not, it's the opposite. Yeah. It's like, so what, you know, and I think that's where the powerful conversation around death can actually be really helpful. And that is a thought experiment to help sort of recognize if you are healthy and well, that can help identify like importance in your life and meaning.
Yeah. And I suppose, you know, drive, if you think about if you knew you were going to die in 5 years, you know, how your actions change. And so like just understanding that you're not going to be here, just understanding that you're not going to be here, that if you really understand that, how that should shift the way that you live. Because as I mentioned, a good way to measure that is actually if you only had a year, how you'd shift the way that you're living. And I'm not saying that you should live like you've only got a year. At the same time, you should live knowing that you're not going to be here.
I do. I think that's one of the things I think often around death is I think about if I were to die, what are the things that I'm about to die, what are the things that I'm going to reflect on that I'm happy about or I'm glad I did or that I do. And then I almost use that reflection to then lean into those things that come to the top of my mind. Like I'm happy, like I have this relationship, or I'm happy that I traveled, or whatever it is. And those things that come up whenever I'm trying to think about what am I actually going to be happy about when I die, and then just try and lean into those as much as I can going forward.
I had a really interesting conversation with the girls. This was a couple of years back now, but we were talking about me dying, you know, and they were sort of, you know, they were a little bit upset about it. I hope they'll still be upset about it. But back then they were upset about it. And it was my sort of discussion with them was like, if you close your eyes now and you asked me a question, you're probably going to know what I'm going to say. And like, I think there's something in that where there's like, if you're close to someone, if you spend a lot of time with someone, you can almost have conversations with them like they're there, almost, you know what I mean? The more you get to know someone. So it's almost like for the people close to you, you're always going to be there in some way. You know, you are always going to be there in some way. And that made me feel better about not being here when the girls are here. Just knowing that they have the essence of me is always going to be within them. Like, that, you know, that gave me a level of comfort that actually, you know, like so much of my life has been giving for them. The only thing that would make me really gutted about not being around for a long time is knowing that like, they wouldn't get to have me around. Yeah. But I think we're always going to be with our loved ones in some way.
Yeah. I read a poem yesterday actually, and it spoke about that. It's like, although they're gone, what you have passed down and what you've done to the people around you, whether it's your children, other family members, whoever else you're close with, that is then within them and has shaped them that they then pass on. So again, it's just generations. Yeah. But I guess when I said earlier, like, oh, I'm going to be dead in 10 years, why does it matter? But then you do think once you have kids, that then just continues and it passes on. So it does matter what you do now because that will continue. Just because you're not here doesn't mean that your ways of doing things or just the essence of who you are is going to be completely gone because it'll be within the people that you're close with.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are the essence of everyone that's gone before us.
Yeah.
It is a good way to think about it. I think talking about kids with death is an interesting thing. You know, like, you know, both my kids or two of our daughters were at my grandparents' funeral, you know, and like it's an interesting thing if they don't quite understand, you know, but it's an interesting thing for, you know, it's one of those tough things as a parent you've got to sort of like try and guide them through to try and help them.
I think that's what like pets are pretty good with. Like I feel like you can experience it where it's not necessarily a person, but you've still experienced, like you still talk them through it and they realise, you know, that they're not coming back. And it's a bit, I feel like maybe explaining it with an animal that's like been there with them constantly, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden it isn't.
Yeah.
Well, just the cultural experience around it is interesting too. Like, you know, being a part of like tangi compared to being a part of like just a standard New Zealand European sort of style funeral, are completely different experiences. You know, in dealing with death, and you're seeing young ones and interacting with both those types of experiences. Like it's, I think more than anything, you know, your kids seeing how the people around them are reacting to a death is the most important thing. It's not the death itself. It's like seeing their reactions and the way that it's dealt with. Like in the Māori world, you know, the body it'll be an open casket for a long period of time, and everyone will be coming in and sitting around and singing and like lots of things going on, and like they're a real part of that. And others, it's everything's quite hidden and quite sort of, you know, once again, I'm not saying one's right or one's wrong, but they do have a different feeling in and amongst the group, you know, when that sort of stuff's going on.
Yeah.
It's
Culture is definitely, you know, I don't know which is right or wrong, but they definitely approach it. Different religions are the same as well.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting talking to people that have thought they might die. You know, like we've had Di Foster on, we've had Kate Twigg on, you know, people that have been through serious health challenges and how their perspective does change a little bit, you know, after something like that. I interviewed a guy called Sean Thomas who was terminally ill, but had a really, it was almost, how would I explain him? Like, I think he had a little bit of sort of like Asperger's sort of thing. So he was just speaking about his death like he was speaking about someone he didn't know, and his take on his own death and how he was going to be gone soon. He made his own casket, drew on it and stuff, and like, you know, like all this sort of, and it is an interesting conversation to talk with someone who's been through an experience like that. And it's that, I think I always say this quote, but you know, we all get two lives, and the second one starts when you realise you only get one, you know. And I think, you know, having a conversation with someone who's been through that, or talking with someone about death is, and that's the value in death, and that's probably why I wanted the conversation today, was because I think that ultimately it's not something you have, you know, a huge amount of control over, but what you can control is if that the conversation around it can influence the fact that when it does happen, that, you know, you feel like you've done the best you can with the time you did have.
Yeah. Like anyone that you've spoken to, like the Kates and the Dies of the world, you know, they would say that their life is richer and fuller because of that experience, you know, and that's really consistent. And so the question I'd say to anyone out there listening is like, how do you get to that without having to have an experience like that? Yeah. Because we shouldn't have to. And I think conversations like this and thinking about mortality and thinking about the chances that we get and being grateful for what we have, I think we can all create that same experience without having to go through something like that.
Agreed. And so hopefully this episode can, you know, spark some conversations about it, and maybe it helps. Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the O Studio podcast. If you enjoyed it, please hit the follow button wherever you're listening, and connect with us on social media at O Studio Global. Our purpose at O Studio is to make recovery and well-being as accepted, as understood, and as practiced as physical fitness. To achieve this, we're building premium wellness hubs around New Zealand and Australia, where communities come together to sauna, ice bath, float, recover, and so much more, all in beautiful spaces designed for everyday people. Check out ostudio.co.nz to find a studio near you, or explore how you could bring O Studio to your community. Own the moment.